This is a story of a hero, an underdog who now fights against the Demon King's army. It is a war between demons and heterogeneous union that has been going on for hundreds of years. As a result, the Union suffered from the significant losses of soldiers and civilians. Deaths in millions, destruction of farmlands and properties worth billions. Currently, the demon army has pushed down the Union to the final defense line. Even in such a dire situation, their lives do not change. Our main character gets slapped by his commander, who says even if he is special it doesn't change army ranks, and MC is still lower than him in ranks. His name is Sentry Gate. He is our MC, and he suddenly wakes up from his sleep. He was dreaming about his rookie days when he got slapped. He was thinking of the nasty dreams he has while getting ready. While coming out of his tent, he asks who was the second shift on watch yesterday. A cute archer elf named Scully answers his question. Because the duty officer left his post, one of the commanders shoved a torch into the barracks at dawn and caused a huge mess, waking everyone up. His shitty dream was also because of that. He says even if he lets him slide, the higher-ups wouldn't stay still, and the cute elf girl agrees with him, saying it is true. Gate asks for the list of incoming recruits from Scully. She mentions that the scripture revealed the Transcendent will appear from this batch, so he should try to filter them well. Transcendent is someone who pulls out Deca weapons, a total of 10 legendary weapons embedded in the Haitian or in the Cloud Mountains. According to the great prophet Saint Vines, 10 Transcendents will gather on the same day and time. Then by cutting the heart of the demon Lord Black Star Dragon, can they end this cruel war. However, so far, only 2 soldiers, our MC, the swordsman Gate and a mage named Morris, have succeeded in becoming Transcendents. The benefits of being Transcendent are 3 times the salary, guaranteed government post after the war, and statue establishment in Peace Plaza. Gate says that even if the Black Magic Department produces a Transcendent, their mentor will be a guy named Uldring, who is a bastard with a ton of inferiority complex toward Transcendence. Elf girl Scully asks him to pick someone with a really strong mental state. Rumor has it if one more person deserts, the higher-ups will split the central unit and tear them to the south and east fronts. But Gate rejects that. He does not choose the Transcendent, the weapon does. While arriving, that cute elf says that bastard, meaning Uldring, the guy who takes the next Transcendent in, has arrived early for once. Then she and Gate greets the senior black mage Uldring. He is indeed a dark elf. And then they start the introduction. Gate thinks that maybe because they are black magic volunteers, they are all rotten to the core. They indeed look overly depressed. He calls for attention, screaming as much as he can. Exactly like you would hear in the military. While shouting, he explains that they are all volunteers for the 2nd Allied Company's spiritual power training, and one of them will lift the Deca weapon embedded in the Red Cloud Mountains and be drafted as a Transcendent to remain in this main unit. Even if not selected for the elite unit, based on the tactics and spiritual training learned at this induction center, they will be dispatched to key points such as the southeast front, left tower borderline, or dungeon grasslands. Inductions score top rankers. Trainee number 7 named Swan. She looks a bit ditzy, but with those enormous assets, it is hard to pass this one. The next one is trainee number 29, Xenia. Surprisingly, there is a huge chance she is a girl. Wow, what a face. Next one is trainee number 13 with long ass, named the Third. Look at him smirking, makes you want to punch him. However, he is the only son of wealthy Beckenberg family. During the peace era, through Heart's Chrome processing for the royal Main family, the greatest dark elf noble family, Beckenberg family, became wealthy, supplying jewelry. They are also famous for stronger paternal genetics than anyone else. That means they look like each other. Eventually that smirk-ass dark elf will become bald. No offense to bald people. Gate introduces himself to trainees that he is the leader of the Transcendent Special Spirit Corps, composed of 10 members who will enter the final dungeon and fight together, Vanguard Gate. Trainees were indeed surprised to meet him. The the Transcendent with a Deca sword on his back. That their jaw dropped. Then finally we meet the second Transcendent mage, Morris the gnome. So he was in the bathroom, relieving himself. That is why we couldn't meet him before. He is also the culprit who woke up everyone in the company by sleeping during the guard duty. Now he is calling the trainees and asking if there is anyone with ill-fitting clothes and if so to write down their desired size and submit it. So, they will exchange the clothes at the barracks. He is so surprised the number 13 guy is exchanging everything from head to toe. And who is number 13, you ask? Right here, that dude looks like a pig with a smirk and will definitely go bald. No offense to bald people again. Gate says he is not sure about trainees high on the list, but screw-ups are clearly visible and encourages to filter them well. That senior dark mage tells Gate that he will handle guiding the kids to the training barracks. And he follows the trainees to barracks while Elf Girl speculates that he is scheming to confiscate the smuggled tobacco leaves and looks like he waited just for that. But Gate says he turns a blind eye. He asks if she is okay not sleeping after duty. Since troop guidance is done, tell her to go quickly and rest. She replies that she was seriously about to die anyway and if she really could go first. Gate finally has the chance to talk to Morris, the culprit of waking up everyone. Looks like Morris also knows what is about to happen. Since Morris can't make eye contact, Gate tells him to look him in the eye and asks if he is sick or something. All of a sudden, a foot comes flying on Morris's face like a flash, surprising even our MC. Again, kick on the head flattening him on the ground. Poor Morris. This mofo says that thanks to Morris he slept well yesterday, and calling him a bastard. And this guy is Senior Knight Jaga from Human Race. Jaga pushes him mercilessly on the ground while he screams, "Still poor gnome." I feel like it is the beginning of bullying the Morris. Gate asks him to stop or he might kill him, and that mofo says gnomes don't die from this much. To prove his point he orders Morris to get up. Morris gets up barely. The mofo says that Morris looks fine cause he is a dwarf bastard. He slaps him again cause he is not dying, cursing him for what he did. Still, I guess Morris can take some beating. Gate tries to stop Jaga from beating the gnome but he gives that look and tells him to let go or he will put another scar on Gate's face. That is indeed unsettling for the MC. Here is the rank table for reference. Our MC is mid-rank while climbing the ranks. However, poor Morris is the lowest rank, that is why he gets run over all the time. As it was in the vague prophecy of the scripture, as the long wait faded, two of them pulled out the Deca weapon and they were called Transcendents. The balance of this brutal war has only been maintained through hierarchy. With so many different species, order must be even stricter. The illusion called Transcendent is just a bait for control. Because folklore can't become a rank, Transcendents still have to obey anyone a rank above. As Gate tries to save his fellow Transcendent, he realizes that he can't do anything cause the person in front of him is someone higher on the rank. Luckily, the cute elf calls Jaga and tells him that the officer is calling all Night Division members up to high rank to the administrative squad because the supply spear counts were off. Jaga flusters after hearing that. It is because he is the one who took the spear without permission. He angrily leaves, even bumping into the elf. She asks what just happened and MC replies that Trash Jaga used to throw hands so easily even when he was low seniority, but his trash instincts have gotten worse. He asks Morris if he is okay, he says he is okay. He casted a defense buff, so it is bearable. That bastard Jaga came all the way from Barracks 3 to here just to mess with Morris, damn that is dedication. But, the elf girl thinks Jaga bastard is also sniffing around because there is a third-generation tycoon, probably that pig guy with a smirk, hoping to get some crumbs. Everyone understands who we're talking about, right? Gate tells Morris to be careful, especially as a Transcendent, because those guys have an insane inferiority complex. He says Morris needs to use his head for a while instead of apologizing. Why does Morris have to shit so often, you ask? It is a specific issue with his intestines. Since gnomes have smaller bodies, their metabolism is faster, so their eating and excretion cycles are about 1.7 times faster than humans. While in trainee barracks, we see our most beautiful dark elf, trainee number 29, Xania looking weirdly at trainee number 7, Swan, even she feels awkward, thinking why that bastard is looking at her like that. This dark elf indeed has a tense gaze. Look at that. That is so shitty. Senior dark elf mage looks proud and quite content with what he has done. He confiscated all the cigarettes that trainees smuggled in. Before he leaves, he mentions that tomorrow before training starts, there is an explanation about tetanus shots, so they have to wait briefly. Tetanus is a bacterial disease, and Swan looks so surprised thinking that there are supposed to be healers at the camp. Everyone went silent, because the senior mage told them to keep it disciplined until the transcendent gate arrives. It was awkward for some people, especially for Swan. But all of a sudden, the girl next to her breaks the silence and shouts, "That bastard doesn't even look senior, but he is acting all high and mighty. If she met him in civilian life, that loser couldn't even make eye contact." The serious of the bunch tells the girl to shut up and stand straight, using some curse words. In retaliation, she screams back, calling him names. He, in return, calls her B-word, and they want to fight each other. Our cute Swan, on the other hand, feels demotivated watching these two dummies. The moment Gate walks into the barracks with the trainee list on his hand, everyone goes dead silent. Maybe they are scared or surprised of the transcendent. Especially Swan. Everybody could hear her gulp. Reading the list, Gate questions why there are so many uniform exchanges today. And they are all coming from one guy. Trainee number 13 immediately jumps up and says that it would be him that needs so many clothes exchanged. He starts with the Beckenberg family's New Year fortune, which is said to avoid earth tones and stay close to sky blue, and also blah, 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 bunch of nonsense. However, Gate immediately stops him and tells him to wear what he has already received. What a guy. He tells him to get in line if that's all he has to say. But that guy screams like a pig, tells to Gate that his family is something blah blah blah. After that, everyone got quiet. You could even hear a fly buzzing. Everyone was looking at Gate, waiting for his next move. All the trainees understood that they hit the jackpot with that dumbass fatso. So it wouldn't be surprising if Gate obliterate them all together. Everyone curses that fatty. Gate makes everyone get down and tells them he would let it slide this time. If anyone acts like a reject one more time, he will ensure that they all see real hell for the duration of their stay in the camp. That fatso barely can do push-ups, yet sweat like a pig. The next day, everybody gathers to get their shots. They are scared because, instead of someone specialized, an archer is giving the shots. Maurice asks Gate why they would need to get this since they already have healers. Gate mentions one of the elf healers with prosthetic leg. During the battle, a goblin's nail-studded club pierced her calf. Since she was a healer, she thought she could patch it with a healing spell. And that is what happened. The difference between the number of people who die from weapons instantly and from tetanus due to rusty weapon wounds are not that big. Maurice says it is really scary. The archmage named Vilcross, who actively announced new healing spell updates, even he couldn't conquer tetanus. It gets noisy near the infirmary because there was one spot empty. Elf girl comes running and informs that trainee number 13 is missing. At this point, everybody know who that is. It is that fatso. Gate asks if anyone saw where that pig bastard went. Number 29, Zaina raises her hand and informs that she can still see where he is going. She has the eagle eye and she says that fatso is heading over the mountains. They conclude that the fatso is going to try to pull the Deca weapon on the hills. He finally reaches the mountain where the weapons are and says to himself that he is the chosen one. He comes in front of the Deca weapon named Jet Black Dew, the dark magic staff, and convinces himself that this weapon was prepared for him. He says that would prove it to everyone who laughed at him. But at that moment, Morris and Gate make it right on time and scream that if he touches the weapon his hands might get screwed. Yet of course, this fatso doesn't listen to him and replies that Gate is afraid that the heir of the great Beckenberg family will be a transcendent. Fatso thinks it is the reason why Gate has been pushing him down by not giving the clothes and not treating him well. Gate screams back that he doesn't know what makes Fatso think that he can be a transcendent. He doesn't even meet the regular soldier standards. Morris thinks that Guy's athletic ability and magic power are at tree goblin level. That's why they look like each other. For reference, a tree goblin is equivalent of lazy sloth of our world. Gate tries to reason with him again, saying that even if he is one to be transcendent, he still can't pull a Deca weapon out without a warm-up process. But this guy replies that Gate should not evaluate him with the same standards as ordinary people. Outstanding people are bound to face rejection. He convinces himself that he would lead ignorant people like Gate to the right direction and pull the weapon right here, right now, and accept the fate given to him as a chosen one. Finally, the moment his hand touches the weapon, he is instantly rejected and thrown back by magic power. We all see that coming from a mile away. Gate and Morris run to him immediately. Morris again questions if he is an elf or ogre looking at his face. He is indeed in a messed up situation. Gate orders to go down the mountain first since there is not much time. Down the mountain, the senior dark mage is explaining what the dark magic is to the trainees. In short, dark magic is a debuff of all sorts. Today they would conduct training in devouring fog resistance, one of the top dark magic debuffs. Since this one is large area magic, it would also hit allies, so they need to build resistance, or so the mage says. He prepares the area by casting the spell and tells the trainees to put on their protective scarves. Once they are inside the cave, he now orders them to take off the scarves. Swan gets irritated that the army is still doing this barbaric training, because they will be fighting against demons, not dark mages who use this spell. Everyone starts to suffocate, because this spell debuffs breathing, hearing, and vision, and so on. Some of them even pass out. However, Xania goes berserk, losing control, screaming mindlessly. So the instructor immediately takes her out and she goes to sleep. As the legendary UFC fighter said, "Why are you tapping? Go to sleep." After that, the instructor orders the trainees to sing the military song, while everyone is suffocating and gasping for air. Our cool young mage Swan gets up and starts to sing to show that she is better than others despite the pain. While she endures the pain and agony, she starts to think that even if eventually she pulls a deca weapon, she will be an assistant under this bastard. She realizes that there is a ton of beatings and absurdity and no special treatment for transcendence while making the transcendence work harder. She wonders if she can endure it. However, for that much money, triple the amount in honor, she believes she perseveres. As she finishes her thought, the instructor Dark Mage tells the trainees to exit the cave starting from the front row as they maintain the formation. They are informed that after a 5-minute break they will move on to the next training ground. She contemplates that she was orphaned from a young age and does not have any grand cause. Just do the bare minimum and get paid, make as much as possible and discharge. She tells herself not to die and live to 500 years old. At that moment, Gate and Morris brings down the pig guy, doing a piggyback. While Morris carries the sword, Gate piggybacks the pig. The senior mage asks, why is that guy in that state, and wonders if he is dying. I guess he doesn't like him either. Well, of course he doesn't. It is because, if Fatso pulled out the weapon, he would be the Dark Mage's assistant. Even if he is incompetent, the Dark Mage couldn't do a thing because of his powerful family. That is my own speculation. The elf girl comes running saying that there were no healers in the infirmary. Gate tells Maurice if he can do something with his buff, but Maurice is not sure because buffs and heal are totally different spells. The senior Dark Mage smirks while looking at Gate, saying dark magic is basically debuffs. He couldn't do anything with a dying guy. He might have been so happy while saying that. Yet again, Swan raises her hand and volunteers. If you want to keep looking at her, you can pause, nobody will know. She believes she can solve that with dark magic. Gate and the mage are surprised. They look at her like she is spouting nonsense. Swan analyzes looking at it. She says a curse creature is attached to that bastard. She says it is a dentacula, parasitic type debuff. It might look like a magical form, but it is still basically a creature. So it should be possible to weaken it with a dark magic debuff, she says. Since it is an emergency situation, Gate says she needs to try it anyway. Then she asks the staff of the senior Dark Mage. He seems concerned, not about the patient's life or the girl's life, but about his staff. She looks at his body and concentrates, thinking about a debuff magic. She starts to cast the spell and debuffs the curse. The curse leaves his body immediately and it looks like it felt good. They are again surprised and both think simultaneously that she is useful. Everyone comes back to the training camp, and Gate was also in one of the carriages. The elf girl asks what happens now and Gate replies whether they discharge him medically or use healers, the higher-ups would handle it. When they were in their tent, Morris comes running and informs Gate that he is summoned to the officer's room and Morris himself as well. From the looks of it, it is a bad situation that they are in. When they went to officer's tent, Gate and Morris were standing quietly, while everyone else in the tent who were pampering that bastard were glaring at these two as if they were the ones who tried to kill the pig. Then Officer Jaga starts to speak that those two, Gate and Morris, were selected as transcendents before their skills and character were established, so they tend to be incomplete as individuals. He continues that trainee Nartz, meaning that pig bastard, was probably very confused by the sudden and unreasonable orders. Soldier Nartz is a model for others with outstanding grades and high expectations, which triggered feelings of inferiority. A sense of crisis in the unprepared transcendents ordering a Deca weapon extraction while ignoring procedures despite knowing it was dangerous. It was behavior to relieve the anxiety that their positions might be shaken. Basically, he is telling that Gate intentionally ordered the pig bastard to go and pull out the Deca weapon. Gate gets confused and says, "What are you talking about?" angrily. Well, rightfully so. Jaga says to the higher-ups that these two are still immature. As their senior, he feels devastated and that is all his fault. And he will severely discipline both soldiers. Looking at Jaga, Gate notices an expensive necklace and rings on Jaga, meaning that he took a bribe and is corrupted to the core. Gate gets so mad. Scared, Morris pleads that they absolutely didn't do it, but gets interrupted by Company Sergeant Moai from the race of giants. He tells them to shut up and they did nothing right to open their mouths. While Jaga bastard smirks behind. Let me know who do you hate the most in the comments. But Company Commander Rebecca, from the race of Harpian, highest rank of them all, says usually these two work hard in military life. She also thought of them well, but now she is disappointed in them. By the way, nice scars, mommy. At least she is the real one here. She continues saying that if they really did wrong, admit it and beg that they will not do it again. Just reflect and do well from now on. She is indeed different from others. However, our dumb Morris screams that they didn't do anything. Thankfully, Gate stops him and apologizes that Morris is still adapting to the unit. Then he admits that he gave the orders and he was reckless for this, while Morris looking at him cluelessly. Commander tells Morris just coolly admit it like Gate and it looks better than denying your mistake. She also says that she is not scolding them for doing wrong. She is scolding because they won't admit their mistake. Officers, probably from that rich family, say even if it was Nartz, the pig guy's, fault, they can't just let this pass because of the severity of the matter. The commander takes them to the side and starts explaining. What a real commander. She is the only decent one so far. She explains that they take this seriously as well and make them run laps in full gear. But officers also must keep in mind that they are transcendents, she says. If something happens to them, what would they do? Will the higher-ups pull out the Deca weapon? She questions why someone who should know better is being so rigid about these two. Is this the intelligence of the military? She adds angrily. Seeing officers are still not convinced, she asks officers' rank and straight up says if they want to die or something. She eases up and says she was just joking, but in the meantime the officers probably wet their pants. She mentions that she also knows their brigade commander, so it wouldn't be a big problem. The officers agree and believe that she would give appropriate punishment. I wouldn't push my luck with her if I were the officer. The giant Moai says today was resolved without major issues, all thanks to the company commander stepping up and laughs. However, she did not find it funny and gave him the look. She tells him to see him separately later. By the way, that white-haired giant, Moai, is the one who brought the torch to the barracks and woke up everyone in the first chapter. Jaga hands out a disciplinary paper and leaves saying you two are lucky. What a mofo. Sad Morris says that it is absurd, but Gate answers that it is common and Morris has to get used to it, after seeing that they have to run 10 laps in full gears every day for 7 days. Meanwhile, Swan trains hard and does excellently for 5 weeks. She is indeed better at everything compared to her fellow trainees. Especially cleaning the boots. She cleans them so well that they start to shine. Others ask her to do theirs too and she proudly says no. She adapted to military life very well, but there is one thing she can't adapt, she says, and that is this bastard, sleeping all the time. She gets annoyed, implying that goodwill becomes a disaster. She thinks she should have let him die. Jaga bastard posts the evaluation records and tells them to check it. Everyone gathers around it and starts to check their scores. Swan and Zaina are special and deserve to be at the top of the list, but Narts, what did he even do except for sleeping, thinks Swan. When Swan looked at it, Jaga was already in front of Narts, asking if everything is comfortable and to his liking. Even Swan gets mad at what Jaga is doing. She thinks even if he is trying not to make it obvious, he is sucking up to that pig bastard, but it is so damn obvious. She worries that he might be planning to push that guy until he becomes transcendent. That is not possible, right? She asks herself. In the regular soldier barracks, Gate and Morris are having a conversation. Morris asks if it is a problem that the scorecard is like this. Gate says the reason is that Jaga bastard stuffed the highest points for him in every category. Curious Morris asks again that he has already failed the Deca weapon extraction, so do scores even matter? Gate explains that basically scores are important to stay in the Central Brigade service. Morris wonders, if that incompetent rich bastard stays here, he will definitely goes under as Aldring's assistant. Will he stay quiet and take that bastard in? Morris asks Gate if he is pissed off, but Gate says if you don't expect anything from humans, there is nothing to be pissed off at. Morris says it is still disgusting that high-rank Jaga can do such things. Meanwhile, that pig bastard asks for holy water, 'cause he is thirsty. Jaga was right in front of him and shouts who is on water duty. Swan and Zania answer the call that they were on duty, so Jaga tells them to get water. While going to get water, Swan gets frustrated, saying that even the empty jar is so heavy and they should make the giants with strength to spare do this stuff. She asks Zania if her hand even hurts. She tells her to rest for a bit. She says she feels like she is dying. While they stop, Swan looks around and asks what these portraits are on the wall. Zania tells her that these are war hero commanders. Swan looks at one of the portraits and laughs, saying what an ugly face, and she wouldn't even get a portrait if she was that ugly. While she turns around asking Zania what she would do, Swan realizes Zania is kind of similar to the person in the portrait. Zania with no hesitation says that it is his father. All children in her family have resemblance to her father. On the other hand, Swan, who messed up, tries to come up with a good way to change the topic. She says he is not that ugly, especially if he is a war hero. She asks Zania what she is doing here, if her father is a commander in the military. She replies that for family honor, she will try to pull the Deca weapon, and if it fails, she will go to his father. She cries that Zania is at the top of the evaluation and with a war hero father too. And there is a third-generation tycoon pig. Why are there so many special people? She says. While looking at Zania, she thinks she would never know what she is thinking and guesses. She is thinking that lowlife, meaning Swan, is struggling for pocket change. Meanwhile, Zania is thinking about what part of the communal mug is safe to put your lips on when drinking water. While pumping water, Zania asks what will Swan do. She replies that she will definitely try to pull the weapon, but if she fails, she will stay with the Central Brigade. But since Zania is second place, was not her consultation next? Swan asks. Zania replies that they called Narts first. She guesses there is some issue. I feel like Zania does not give an F about it. In the meantime, in the tent of the commander, Narts faces everyone for his consultation. Our cute elf girl says that as a trainee with a high score, he indeed gets selection rights, but she asks if he is serious about his choice. She adds this isn't like changing cloth sizes. Once stamped, no one can change it. But Narts answers with confidence that he came to this decision after much thought and deliberation. Jaga bastard, who has no idea about what is about to happen, thinks that he would either retry weapon extraction or apply for Central Brigade service with his specialty as a dark mage, and he is definitely going under Aldring. Jaga would just reap the benefits. Here comes the good part. Narts, however, decided to stay in the Central Brigade and apply for the knight position. But everyone was so shocked, especially Jaga bastard and Aldring. The decision they never expected. Why is it surprising, you say? It is because Jaga is the senior knight, and that pig becoming a knight means Jaga has to take care of him. Before Jaga is able to utter a word, the company sergeant says that cross-assignment would be an excellent choice. The sergeant even praises him, saying sometimes one's innate species and personal aptitude differ and he made a courageous choice. On the other hand, Morris asks Gate what the hell this is and looks at him. What he sees is just a smirk on Gate's face as if it was his plan. While ago, in the training ground, Gate said to Morris that trainee number 13 will go to the barracks of night. At that time Morris did not understand anything. Gate guessed that Jaga contacted number 13's parents and received extra bribes and showed it so deep in his throat, whatever happens now he can't spit it out. He bragged to officers with his own mouth that number 13 is so good and capable, now he can't back out and say that Pig is incompetent. Number 13 is so starved for attention, when his dream of being transcendent crashed, he will obviously go to the only person who gave him attention. Just a small push would be enough. That is why Gate once praised him, saying he has a cool tone so the night uniform will suit him perfectly. So in the end, dumping this reject of a person onto the Night Commander Jaga was the grand plan of one person called Transcendent Gate. A while ago, even Aldring started to realize that he is screwed because of Jaga. He couldn't even believe that this number 13 guy is an honors student with a high score. And then something clicked in his mind after seeing that Jaga has all that jewelry. It was at that moment that he knew he was in a messy situation. And there was nothing he could do. Just be a dog to that pig while Jaga reaps the harvest. He tries to reason with Jaga, but Jaga says if Aldring ever heard of accepting results and obeying orders. Aldring, however, was so worried that he would be stuck with him like this for real. To everyone's surprise, he decided to be a freaking knight. At that moment Aldring felt he got younger at least 50 years after hearing that he'll be a knight. So, he agreed with the sergeant immediately, saying that they have to approve this immediately. He even mentioned that Senior Jaga treats trainee narts without prejudice and supports that the rigid barriers between races should be brought down. Aldring even adds that higher-ups really valued Senior Jaga's sincerity. At this point he is doing everything to dump the trainee on the knight. The Sergeant Moai says that it is really considerate of the trainee to reflect on the effort and accept it, so it is a win-win situation in the end. Jaga tries to argue but is interrupted by Aldring. Aldring says that surely Jaga did not take bribes and fudge his scores, and adds that he has to accept results and obey the chain of command. No matter how furious Jaga was because of Aldring's teasing, he couldn't say anything in front of the officers and narts. He also had no idea it was the master plan of Gate. But it was just the beginning for Gate. The revenge for all the discrimination, for slaps and scars. At that moment, Morris realized the real demon was the Transcendent Gate. Of course he is, that is how he has to be a main character. After everything settled, the trainees were at their last training march, walking in the dark. All of a sudden, Xania notices an unusual pebble in the bushes. She picks up, saying that would be a good souvenir, while Swan watches her to pick up stuff all the time. While everyone marches, Jaga is riding a carriage that has narts lying lazily inside. Everyone knows that it is wrong, but no one can say a word. Gate screams that once they get over that ridge, they are all done. That is why they have to just stare at the butt of the person in front and not think anything. If they start thinking, their legs will give out. They all get back to the training camp and pass the full gear march as the final exercise. At last, the Deca weapon drawing starts while the commander herself is present. The commander congratulates them for coming this far and acknowledges their hard work and lets the final drawing ceremony commence. Gate calls for 2 trainees who are eligible to draw the weapon. And those 2 are apparently Swan and Xania. He tells the candidates to start warming up. They get ready to draw. Commander announces that Xania will be the first one to draw the weapon. Xania apologizes to Swan and says she will be the one to draw and become the Transcendent. Since it can't be pulled by ordinary means, she decides to use her overwhelming muscles. Our elf girl gets surprised that a dark elf girl can have ogre-level muscles. Gate realizes she will try to yank out the weapon with brute strength. Even Swan gets worried that her genetics are of warriors, she might be able to pull it out. With her strength, she starts to pull as hard as possible, showcasing huge amounts of power. She even screams, "Father." It seems with that face expression she will definitely pull out. After a lot of tries, she seems to cool down and think about what to do. Suddenly she gets up and asks for a pickaxe or a shovel, Surely she doesn't want to give up that easily. The next one is Swan. She goes there with confidence, nothing to lose, but everything to gain. The commander says in the name of the scripture, she commands her. The qualified one shall draw forth the weapon of transcendence. The question: is she the chosen one? Will she be the one to pull it out? Everyone anxiously watches, not knowing what will happen. She is confident that she can pull that out. But all of a sudden, even when she tries to pull with all her strength, the weapon does not budge. Everyone starts to hesitate, and some are even concerned that the scripture might be wrong this time. Even Swan starts to doubt herself, thinking if she miscalculated. After all that, she tries to give up. But her hands didn't let go, as if she was glued to it. And suddenly, the ground erupts as she pulls out the staff from the ground. However, her consciousness meets the crimson cloud spirit, the spirit of the Deca weapon. That spirit straight up calls her murky. Even Swan was not expecting this. The spirit says, unlike the previous master of the staff, she is murky without a single strand of ambition. As the spirit goes into her consciousness, it figures that despite her keen intellect and great capability, she spends hundreds of hours on weekday nights reading mass-produced romance novels. Basically, she is a weeb just like us. She says it was just a phase when she was not even 100 years old. The Crimson Cloud decides to grant her the staff of Black Mage, Pitch Black Dew. The spirit also says that she is more to its liking compared to that smelly pig and monstrous girl. The spirit is exactly like us. This Deca weapon has the property of corrupting its user, but someone like her, whose greatest ambition is to lie at home reading mass-produced romance novels, is trustworthy of the weapon, says the spirit. She gratefully accepts the weapon, but says that her novels are not just novels but literature. As she screams, she pulls out the weapon. No doubt about it. Everyone is surprised, but it shouldn't be. Maybe they were surprised because she screamed literature. They clapped in confusion, but she really pulled out the legendary weapon. She herself was in shock for a while. However, not everyone was happy about this. Emergence of a female transcendent did not sit right with some high-ranking women in the camp. They say if you're going to take triple the pay without having seniority, you better be ready to take the triple the curse too. As we already know so far, transcendents are not treated well. All we can do is just pray for Swan as fellow weebs. Yet there are some people that are really happy for her. Xania says if it is Swan, she acknowledges her with no problem. All of a sudden something snapped and Xania felt it. She felt the extremely ominous aura in the long distance. With her eagle eyes she looks at that far. She definitely sees a demon, a big one at that. After the ceremony, when Swan was feeling butterflies in her stomach, Xania appeared behind her, scaring the hell out of her. Who wouldn't be scared? Xania explains that because she did not want to ruin the mood during the weapon extraction ceremony, she kept something important to herself for a bit without informing anyone. It is now the perfect time to reveal. She says she saw demons gathering at the peak of the mountain. Especially now, Swan is directly under the Transcendent Gate. She asks her to give him something. It is the spiky ball she picked up during the training. She feels something ominous from the ball and tells her to make sure to deliver it to Gate. Suddenly Xania gets big with all her muscles, startling Swan, and gives her the strongest hug ever. Despite Swan's tapping, she wouldn't let go for a while. Swan tells her she will send a word during her 100-day leave and was glad to be her comrade. Xania thanks her for the last 6 weeks and leaves saying adios. Here we have our first couple, the ones who were fighting and cursing each other at the beginning, and now they are hugging and crying because they have to leave each other behind. Just like that, everyone leaves, leaving Swan behind. She feels sad, but also it is the dawn of a new journey. Those three are just happy that all the trainees left. In the barracks, Swan tries out her new uniform. OMG, look at that. I would pause the video and appreciate the artist's work if I were you. Look how gorgeous she looks. She comes out of her tent after she finished changing, and Morris was waiting for her outside. He hands the recruit's notebook out to her, explaining that it is a notebook that contains all the seniors' batch numbers, cleaning and food duty rotations, how to report in, and so on. He also shows her the daily password and tells her to memorize it. Since senior soldiers like Jera are sensitive about this stuff, it is better she doesn't forget it. Who is Jera? While leaving, Morris tells her to memorize the contents of the notebook while she waits and always makes sure she keeps the decaphone at all times. When she was reading, she heard some noise outside that made her curious. And outside, it was Gate training with his deca sword. He was only doing slashes named rock-splitting slashes. Inside, Swan thinks that crude technique like that would ever work in real combat. All of a sudden she remembers the spiky ball on her hand. The one she meant to give to Gate. Aldring was happy on the other hand, knowing he can write any task in the notebook and juniors would do it. However, inside the Knights barracks Jaga was screaming that even if Narts doesn't wash his own clothes, he should at least put it outside because it smells so bad. Jaga deserves it at this point. While Aldring was walking, he comes across these two women, a female advanced soldier duo on the verge of promotion to elite soldier. Western Snake Eyes Jera and Southern Muscle Brain Asen. Aldring, who was a devilish lion in front of the trainees, was just a measly dog in front of his seniors. The elf senior Jera asks why his expression is so bright, something good must have happened. But Asen, the giant, looks so pissed off and says, the bastards with no seniority are getting juniors before them. Thinks something definitely wrong here while poking at Aldring's head. The Snake Eyes tells him to bring the junior dark elf to the entertainment hall. Aldring says that it is a bit early for that, the transcendent recruit is still under the recruit protection period. He thinks that these bastards are acting like elites just because the real elites went on group leave. Asen the giant slaps the hell out of him for talking back to his seniors. After one slap, he just agrees to bring her. He is just a useless dog to sell away his assistants like that. He walks back to Swan's tent thinking there is nothing else he could do. Inside, there is our gorgeous dark elf Swan sitting, waiting for orders. He tells her to come out, and she immediately obeys the order like a real soldier, while she is a real soldier. He asks if she smokes, she replies she doesn't, but if ordered to she will. He says that advanced soldiers summon them. Swan asks if Sir Aldring is an advanced soldier himself. But he says he is behind in terms of batch. Around here even a single batch difference is huge. He makes an excuse saying he can cover for her on everything, but he can't when it comes to the female advanced soldiers. Basically, he is just useless when needed the most. She has to get used to it eventually if she wants to stay here according to Aldring's words. She say yes, she has no other options either. We can see that Gate has already started researching about the spiky ball. It is called Wiggle Eye, a very peculiar looking molded skin of a demon's eye. The only place that survived when Wiggle Eyes were found, organized infiltration teams and launched a preemptive strike on the demon realm before the eye turned purple. But the fact that the Wiggle Eye has already turned purple means demons have finished evolving into a form suitable for invasion. Everyone is screwed, Gate fears. While he was rushing somewhere with the Wiggle Eye and the book, Morris asks why Gate's expression is like that. Gate just tells him to prepare for the battle this instant, but also asks who is the duty officer. Morris answers that it is Staff Sergeant Moai, but he has not seen him for a while. He thinks he is sleeping somewhere. Gate runs off thinking after the duty officer and the next in line elite soldiers are all on leave, so the next highest seniors are Jera and Asen. But these two were meeting the new Transcendent and asking if she knew who they were. Swan answers that they are advanced soldiers Jera and Asen from the batch year 363 and screams reporting for duty. Jera, who is sensitive about password, asks today's password and Swan answers the password is cigarette. They now start to bully Swan. Jera says that her hair looks so natural and pretty. But back in her days they would burn them all off or pluck them out. I guess they are jealous. She also points out, juniors are not allowed to wear short skirts. Come on, we like that skirt. She questions how she even made it into the army with a brain that bad. Suddenly the door opens and Gate comes in, surprising everyone. He could not be on time any more than this. He explains that he figured out that what he is holding is a Wiggle Eye and it is not completely purple and there is still time. He continues saying that it will turn fully purple tonight and then there will be nothing they can do to stop it. Instead of a response, he gets smacked on the head and she says that his seniors are in the middle of educating the young Transcendent, but he walks in, does as he pleases and spouts nonsense. White Elf stops her friend, agrees to listen to him since it sounds urgent. When Gate starts to explain, they start to giggle instead of listening, sort of mocking him indirectly. However, Jera accuses him of coming here chasing Swan, because he might be into her. She calls Swan B-word for being such a girl. They literally kick him out and order him to wash the rags and empty the trash cans if he doesn't have anything else to do. Gate is still worried that there is not much time, but every senior is messed up and does not care about the emergency of the situation. It is the night time now. These two guards are talking that they have 40 minutes until the shift change, so they want to tell a scary story to pass the time. One guard's face changed so fast he was so scared that he pissed his pants. But his partner doesn't buy it, saying his acting sucks. He in fact was not acting, he definitely saw the demon. Before we get into the fight with the demon, we will have a history lesson. The Union achieved an uneasy ceasefire after a 100-year war. The bloodstains faded and swords were laid to rest. The Federation forgot the original resolve it swore in the beginning of the war with demons. Officers and soldiers alike were rotting away fast. There were many no-shows for duty or deserters in the ranks. The Black Bar, the final boundary between demon race and Federation, was breached by the demon Wargle. Until then no one knew. Maybe this was an inevitable result, considering how everything has played out so far. Now the fight begins. They blew the horns warning everyone of the demon breach. The regular soldiers were not ready nor capable of handling a single demon right now. When people face the demon race for the first time, because of pressure and despair they start to vomit. Since the demon Wargle is a high tier among the lower demon species, its killing intent and presence were even more overwhelming. That demon easily slaughtered the nauseous and scared soldiers easily. It was about to slash one of the remaining soldiers who at that point lost the will to fight and was ready to welcome his death. And the hero appears. The hero jumping in the full moon is such a cinematic masterpiece. Gate hits the demon with everything he has, putting all his strength to his sword. Even though he hit the demon right at its skull, the demon did not fall. Moments after, Aldring the Dark Mage arrives as well. He also could not believe that it was a real demon. Archer elves also position themselves in a higher and more favorable spot. They have the demons surrounded from all sides. Since it was their first time encountering a demon, even the Transcendents were scared. Morris and Swan were shaking. Swan was in a situation in which her soul left her shaking body. At that moment Aldring interrupts her, saying why she is shaking so much. But clearly he himself is shaking like he was being electrocuted, but also was nauseous. Morris tells Gate that other than Aldring, no senior officers showed up. Gate tells since they are in an emergency situation, they would act first and report later. Aldring does not buy it and says those bastards, meaning senior officers, are probably hiding somewhere because the bugle sounded ages ago. He screams to young soldiers who are about to throw up and says they were told to put on the scarves during such times. The demon was ready to attack again. A bunch of slime like goo was coming out of its tail. It is called swamp and it is classified as extremely dangerous because once it spreads over the ground it becomes the demon territory. At that critical moment, the real hero of the story appears. Nartz says it is his destiny to defeat demons as a knight. Go Nartz, go. Even he flies away after a slap from the demon's tail. This is it for him for now. In the midst of chaos and panic, Swan was disappointed in herself, saying even that idiot is charging like that, but she is shaking so badly she can't even take a step. As a transcendent, she thinks she is unfit for the group. Gate concludes if the main body dies before the goo hardens, it will just decompose. So they have to kill the demon quite fast. He charges, thinking the demon Wargles that have recently finished molting still have soft outer layers. If he can expose such a membrane at its neck, he can finish it with a single strike. But the demon also protects itself, not giving him a chance to strike. With a single punch, the demon pushes Gate away. Gate believes the blocking the neck was not intelligence but a primal instinct for survival. If there had been at least one swordsman of senior rank or higher to split its attention with a simultaneous attack, they could handle it differently, Gate says to himself, thinking of his senior swordsman who deserted the army. The sudden strike from the demon was stopped by debuff while Gate was thinking of strategy. It was Aldring that casted the debuff, saying that the demon is a big trash. Everyone was looking at Aldring at this very moment, waiting for his orders. Even the archer elves were expecting an order from him. It was at this moment that Aldring knew he was the highest-ranking soldier on site. He screams that after Morris puts a large area buff, everyone has to pour everything they have got, indiscriminate bombardment. Archers shoot and Aldring puts a binding debuff on the demon. The demon starts to struggle momentarily and tries to break loose. That made Aldring question himself if he gave the right orders and ordered Gate to do something quick. Gate gathers every ounce of strength on his body and waits for the perfect moment to attack. The moment the demon lets its guard down to escape the binds, Gate sees his perfect chance and jumps to strike. Screaming he will finish the demon for sure. He succeeds and separates the demon's head from its body in a flash. Some are surprised and some are relieved by this. As the severed head flies and Gate stands over the demon's body, his kill was confirmed for sure. However, it was noticed by something ominous far away at the peak. It was one of the higher-ranking demons who was gathering the demon army. Commander Rebecca receives mail through this cat while she was in the Federation headquarters, far from the camp that defended against the demon. However, the cat arrived late because the letter was sent yesterday. The letter was from Gate. It said despite his warnings, all the senior officers ignored the words of Gate and he had no choice but to contact the commander herself. He attached the proof as well. After that, she immediately goes to Control Headquarters, where she meets 5 cardinal constellations, 5 old geezers, I would call them. They say she came right on time. They were watching everything through the crystal orb that connects to the transmission crystal tower. They say if the letter is accurate, it means the sender already predicted a demon infiltration yesterday. One of the geezers with some balls says if the dark bar, the wall that separates the Federation defense line, is already breached, there is no reason nor time to delay the full-scale advance order. Another geezer worries that it is officially a ceasefire period, so they might be needlessly provoking and escalating something that can be done quietly. This old man, I call him Steel Balls Geezer, says to that old man that he keeps saying provoking demons, but he has to provoke his humanity first before saying such bullshit. They show on the map that Grotan Bloodlands is the farthest region from Demon's core territory and their head demon is hive mind type, meaning if the head goes down every other demon follows. Moving the whole army would be burdensome, so they just have to only deploy the 3 transcendents. But before that they ask the opinion of Captain Rebecca. Morris worries that Gate might be punished for skipping the chain of command. Gate says it was an emergency, so he had no choice. Gate also figures out that they have to move first and infiltrate the Bloodland and kill the host demon. Once the host dies, all the linked, lesser units will die as well. Curious Morris asks what will happen now. Gate says they will march. Looks like the ceasefire is over and they have to go to war. Finally, that bastard Jaga appears after everything has calmed down. What is more, he asks what the hell happened all night. He says even now he came because of that pig bastard. He orders others to get him to the infirmary while thinking he should have died. While somewhere else, 2 seniors were having morning tea discussing why it was so loud last night. They laugh knowing that a demon got in last night and everyone else busted their asses just for one demon. Even Aldring gets depressed after seeing those 2 women. He is not the best, but at least he showed up to the fight. The Sergeant Moai on the other hand blames the soldiers for wrecking up the reporting system, and the cause of the chaos was them not reporting to him, he says. All of a sudden rain starts to pour and Gate feels a strange uneasiness that he can't put his finger on. Moai writes a report to Rebecca saying at around 3 a.m. under his command, the demon was destroyed. Thanks to his bravery, there were no casualties, he adds. He thinks life without Commander Rebecca is easy. He hopes she will stay in headquarters as long as possible. Meanwhile, in another barracks, transcendents were being questioned. They are all thinking if the situation is actually real. The reason was this senior, Jera, and her laundry. Because juniors did not take the laundry when it started to rain. She demands an answer while kicking Morris' head. Then she moves on to our elf girls. Because she did not bring hot water to her. She asks if it is because she is a wood elf and her learning is slow. She is just frying everyone. Gate tries to explain it to Senior Jera, saying it was an emergency situation yesterday and the situation is still not over. The giant twists his ears saying he doesn't know when to say yes and goes on to tell that he killed one demon and now he can be arrogant. She says that seniors' clothes and hot water is way more important than any demon. Even if they were about to die, they have to make sure the laundry and hot water are set. What a piece of trash, these two. I am sure something good will happen to these two. Gate realizes that this was the source of his uneasiness from earlier. Gets mad thinking these pigs and dogs will only understand when they see blood, because there were no casualties. They don't understand the seriousness of the matter. Suddenly they hear that everyone must assemble at the drill ground for the roll call. These two say that they have to meet here again after the roll call. Everyone gets sad knowing that was not the end. At the drill, the Sergeant Moai announced that only transcendents can enter the Bloodlands, the demon territory of the Hive Head, because their weapon lets them breathe there. They will be deployed first. After killing the host, they can signal with sacred fire and the remaining forces will move in and carry out purification. Gate counters him back saying there are many demons along the movement route. Without the full force it is impossible for just 3 of them to make it there. That is a suicide mission. The sergeant screams that he cannot question a superior's order, while Swan appreciates Gate and his ability to not give a damn and say it when something is wrong. Gate pushes saying that there is no time and the sergeant must issue the order for full force advance immediately. However, what Moai does is only motivate them by saying if they believe they can do it then they can do it. Since it is raining today, Moai orders them to clean up and start the advance of 3 transcendents at first light tomorrow. Gate worries that fully evolved demons will cross the wall tonight and when every minute and second counts they cannot wait idly. Then he notices a feather coming down from the sky. It was indeed our favorite commander, coming down as a hero who will save the day. She better have good news. She holds Gate's shoulder as if saying, "I got your back, my boy." Wholesome. And her unit as well landed, meaning she got some backup troops. Moai is so shocked seeing the Captain Rebecca asking how she returned so suddenly. She angrily asks Moai if what she is holding is the actual report. He says he can explain, but the commander just shoves her finger into his mouth and kicks him on the knee and says he wrote a damn novel, not a report. She also mentions the Crystal Tower is not just for show. She says she doesn't even need the report to see who busted their asses to fight the demon and who enjoyed the easy ride, because it is obvious to her. She calls for the attention of all units and states she came back suddenly because she received an emergency order from headquarters and this is not training. As of this moment, immediately all Federation enlistment forces are to complete full armament, meaning that it is war from this point on. According to the Encyclopedia of the Demons, the demon race is connected via a shared consciousness, so lower entities can never act independently without orders from the main brain. So the whole army marches towards the demon land. One of the captain's subordinates informs she has already requested support from nearby units. However, danger signals have gone off along the entire perimeter, so getting reinforcements will likely be difficult. Now the captain says it is a race against time, so they can't wait for reinforcements anyway. Eventually, they come across the swamp that lets demons move as it becomes demon territory. However, it has already spread inside the walls and into the Federation zone. The Sergeant Moai orders the soldiers to put on their scarves, because in the swamps it is hard for ordinary soldiers to breathe without special masks. The swamp becomes so hard to move around. Instead of mud there is the goo of demons. Monsters suddenly start to attack the soldiers, catching them off guard, because they come out from inside the pool of goo. Soldiers quickly figure out the type of the demon. The commander orders the infantry to be square and start defending. Soldiers with shields form a wall while dark mages debuff the enemy and gnomes buff the soldiers from the back. The commander comes flying towards demons and cuts off one of their noses. She also explains that if they cut off the nose of these monsters, they lose their sense of direction and become hopeless. Everyone starts to butcher the noses of every demon that comes out of the goo. Finally, the big boys come out of their hiding spot. Time for some action. The commander herself with the Harp Ion squad starts to attack one of the demons. She orders archers to shoot non-stop. The numerous small demons overwhelm the wall of soldiers, giving the big ones a chance to attack further in the defense line. As a result, Aldrin gets caught in the attack. Since he is a dark mage, he does not have any defensive ability. At that moment Gate comes to rescue him by blocking the attack. He says he will handle the big one, so Aldring should inject ink mist into the holes and catch the small ones. He starts pouring his dark magic into the holes that the demons were coming out of. As a result, most of the small demons inside the goo were immobilized and gave others the chance to solely focus on the big ones. Gate has already figured out the demons' fighting pattern. Instead of long ranges, close and sudden attacks were hard for the demons to block. With a single and precise blow, he chopped off the head of the demon. The commander and her subordinates were already finishing up the second one. With this much fighting, they now just crossed the wall that is supposed to be the final line of the Federation. Swan was still in shock, and she was not able to do much against the demon, so she has to pull it together from here on. So this senior elf was a healer. And she heals herself, saying, "What if it leaves a scar?" Yet her action was quickly caught by the commander and were ordered to heal the combatants first. This giant girl also evaporates the small demon with a single punch and goes on a power trip, saying that she ordered the soldiers not to let the demons through. The commander analyzes the current situation, thinking that their composition is not that bad. However, because of the debuffs from the swamp and mana depletion of mages, their overall stats are lowering rapidly. Even though it is just the beginning of the demon territory and far away from the main brain. She thinks in the end the key to determining the victory only lies with those transcendents. One of the birdies sights the Bloodlands not so far away. Was it good news? I don't know, but definitely even worse news followed. The demons were swarming in from the rear. Captain orders mages to deploy the World Tree. It is an area defense buff in the form of a World Tree. The commander calls Gate and tells him that this might be the closest the army can come to the nest of the head demon, and with this many demons the sanctuary won't hold out for long. Gate says he is well aware. The commander orders mages to channel all of their remaining mana to the transcendents and flood them with heals and buffs. So they move into the cave of the main demon. The defensive function of Deca weapons gets activated, emitting light and letting transcendents breathe easily. Gate tells the rest to hold still and follow him. His enormous sword can work as a lantern. He looks at his companions and figures that they are so scared, they can barely move. He thinks to himself, in this case this might be the battle he must finish on his own. A grim situation where he must face the demon with subordinates who know nothing. Gate forces himself to swallow that fear and despair, and ventures deep into the darkness. Morris gets spooked by deafening quietness and asks why there are no other demons inside. Gate says since it is the chamber of the demon host, not even an ant can enter without permission. So usually most hosts are alone, and they finally come face to face with the great demon. They are scared shitless, can't even breathe. Morris, looking at the demon, thinks it is only slightly bigger than the ones they faced before. Nobody told Morris that the demon was sitting. When it stood up, its size doubled, making them look small. Finally the battle begins. The scared transcendents on the one side and the enormous demon on the other. Who will win? The demon gathers all the air in its lungs and screams, pushing the beings that are supposed to kill it. They are blown back from just a taunt. Especially Swan. She panics, saying that she did not think it would be like this when she signed up to be transcendent, and she does not want to be one now. She begs that she wants to live. She wants to go home. The two vomit nonstop from the fear. While screaming to the two so they get a grip, Gate loses focus and the demon attacks without missing a beat. As the only sane one, Gate had to save his subordinates, taking both of them far back. When he remembers the time Moai was about to send only 3 of them, he gets angrier. He casts aside his anger along with those 2 and only focuses on taking down the big one. Thinking it would just be a bigger one of the demons he faced so far, and attack patterns should be similar, he jumps to attack. Closing the distance by dodging its attack, he finally has the chance to strike. He aimed for its vital point, the neck, and hit as hard as possible. Sadly, his sword did not even penetrate, leaving something that can barely be called a scratch. Yet with just a punch from the demon he goes flying. He crushes into the cave wall, briefly reflecting in those seconds that the power, speed, and timing were all perfect, and yet he could not cut through the weakest point of the demon. Wondering how he could win, he notices a black sword in one of the small caves that just collapsed from the impact. He instantly recognizes the sword and goes into shock. It belonged to one of the seniors that he remembered when he was fighting the first demon a while back. He thought if he was there they could easily win at that time. But now seeing the sword and the pattern was unmistakably the same. He thought he deserted all this time, but his senior met his end here. So, to a demon who slaughters way stronger opponents, the transcendent who lacks an actual combat experience, they were nothing more than toys to soothe its long-lasting boredom. The demon picks up a bunch of stones from the ground. I guess he can do long-range attacks too, launches the stones to the two remaining transcendents. They got injured so badly, but they still got up. The demon notices Gate standing up in the distance, and with a single jump he kicks him to the ground and punches him until he is one with the ground. We probably see a death arc at this point. These two barely get up as they should. They are probably not hurt 1/10 of the amount as Gate is getting hurt. As one last resort, Swan casts binding debuffs on the demon. However, as swordsmanship and archery, magic also requires tons of focus. Therefore, magic used while in fear is bound to fail. After breaking the debuff chains, the demon jumps towards the two. They already gave up and were ready to be slaughtered. In that critical moment, the legendary Transcendent Gate appears with a huge swing to the demon's face. Even that swing did nothing, and now he was open to a big blow. So he flies back to the rubbles he came from. As expected from the main character, he gets up again, ready to fight. But before that, he asks if those two are willing to die here. He says if they cannot provide support, they die, including the troops outside, holding out against the demons. He advises them not to think about anything else except for that monster in front of him. Only focus on that. What is the worst that can happen? They are already dying. After Gate's words, something changed. Swan grew calm and focused. She remembered that the only spell powerful enough to hold the monster of that caliber was earth-binding magic. However, its binding power weakens the further it is from the ground. The best and only moment for that magic would be when the demon's head close to the ground. With that big body of the demon, Gate wondered how it is possible for it to move that fast. At that exact moment something clicked inside Swan's head. She asked if Morris can cast a buff on just one of the demon's legs. With a little mana left in Morris, it is still possible. She says they don't have any options, so Morris should hurry. The demon jumped with all its strength and was about to punch them. With everything he has, Morris casts a buff on one leg. Swan gets ready to catch the moment cause it is the last and only option. As expected, the demon jumps, but since its one leg is buffed, it trips and falls to the ground within its face. Swan uses her strongest magic in her arsenal and binds the demon momentarily. Gate sees the opening they made with the last of their strength. Swan saw him train with stone crushing / every day. At those times she questioned if that technique was useful in actual combat. She screams stance number 1 and it immediately clicks in Gate's head. With that, the moment everyone waited for, the Transcendents push through the hell of pain for this. Gate stands as a butcher and the demon as a sacrifice. Morris uses the last drop of his mana to buff Gate's strength, and Gate says he takes back calling him good-for-nothing idiot. Morris and Swan are indeed true Transcendents, he admits. With the first basic form of stone slashing technique, he decapitates the demon like an executioner. And everything is done for, but they still can believe what just happened. Gate sensed something inside the demon's body. Something like meat to consume. He cuts open the demon with his knife. He found a grotan lip, a demon's special part. They instinctively knew that they had to eat it. Just like that, Gate gobbles it down while the two watch without saying a word. The wavelength of the special part makes whoever matches that wavelength mistake its smell for taste and triggers a primal compulsion that you must chew and swallow it. It travels down to the stomach and spreads. The organs tingle so much the person can tell where that energy is in the body. It is not just digestion, it is a fusion. Gate swings his sword a few times and becomes sure that the highly active proteins that were absorbed boosted his strength to the absolute limit their body can handle without breaking. In other words, he just became super strong and his combat prowess just tripled. This information was not in the Encyclopedia of Demons, which means only Transcendents who have entered the Bloodlands can know it. He tells the two to listen carefully and says he doesn't know why, but they must have felt it too. The subconscious wavelength was shared between Transcendents. They agree that it is true. Gate explains that the fights from here on will be even more brutal, but there will be rewards at the end. As they felt today, the one who receives the reward seems to be decided by the part's wavelength. So the information about these rewards they gain by killing demons will be shared only within the Transcendent Squad. This will be their rule for surviving as Transcendents to the very end. And both scream that they understood. Swan convinces herself that Gate doesn't think like an ordinary human, he is different. Gate already knew. What he would have to face from now on was not just combat at the front line. War is not fought with swords and spears alone. In the thick of war, the dirtiest, ugliest thing is always the petty politics played by those hiding behind the desks. Yes, Gate, yes, these old geezers suck. Gate saw right through the cowardice and disgust up the chain of command. They would try to steal even the transcendent achievements. And the names who bled on the field would quietly vanish from the records, that much he already sensed. Outside, a monster suddenly attacked Moai. He was too late to defend himself. His life flashed before his eyes. He wondered if he would die like this. He was ready to take his final breath, but the monster disappeared. Not just one but all of them vanished. The commander orders to drop the barrier. As the swamp fades away, in its place sprouts appear. They are white cloud trees, plants whose nature opposes demonic energy, proof that there are no demons nearby. Even the air got fresh instantly. The elf girl and Aldring felt it very well. Gate and the rest come out of the cave holding the head of the demon that they just killed. As the commander watches them, she thinks she was ready for total annihilation. But she is definitely happy that they defeated the demon. The elf girl comes running to Gate. She must have been so worried, but Gate stops her immediately saying she became gross after the demon fight. On the other hand, Aldring seems happy to see them alive, and tries to smoke a cigar for it. He was immediately stopped by the commander and was ordered to do head count for each unit. At this point, Aldring could not care less and was just happy. However, Jera the elf healer calls the commander a drama queen and leaves with the giant girl. The giant girl says if she could enter the Bloodlands, she would rim them apart herself. Like hell she would. We even saw the elite swordsman's remains, who are in reality far superior to her. Gate just thinks that they haven't faced a white body host demon and they never will, and from the looks of it they clearly sat this battle out in the back too. He says the danger of the demons hasn't hit their skin yet. The plot thickens. It feels like something ominous is coming for those two women. They immediately started to repair the walls and build temporary barracks for each unit in Groton Bloodlands, the newly conquered place. As a result of the battle, 11 wounded and 4 dead. Scully says from here on they cannot avoid sacrifices, the war has already begun. She urges that they need to hurry with the forward defense line. She is already seeing some demons again near the perimeter. The sergeant calls for Asen, the giant girl who was working on the temporary barracks at the moment. She complains when the sergeant says that they have to move materials to reinforce the position. She says that can't others do it because her knees are already hurting. He says when giants move the job gets done faster. At this moment Gate asks if these stone blocks are for the wall. He just says yes without paying attention. It took him a while to realize a human was lifting the 2 blocks of stone at once and was carrying to the distance. They are so shocked and ask him if it is heavy. Gate simply says that it is manageable. The giant girl says that maybe it is not that heavy. Moai says if she does not think it is heavy, she can come and lift it herself. Then you can see the jealousy in her face, saying so this is what it means to be transcendent. Mid-rank swordsman named Norman brings news from the enlistment headquarters. He says that the next enlistment batch for the Federation enlistment unit will have the next Deca weapon. He says according to Revelation the following Deca weapon will be the Gauntlet Rage Tear. The enlistment slot is assigned to a giant, meaning the next person who will pull the weapon out will be a giant. So the giant girl Asen gets so happy because the giant transcendent will most likely be her assistant.